happy that you're all here and willing to let CAAO kind of hopefully share information with you that you didn't know about property tax, as well as what CAAO believes are, I've used this phraseology, this is not approved phraseology by the association. We believe these are the low-hanging fruit for the General Assembly, what they could do today to give legitimate and real property tax relief to the citizens of Ohio that own property. But before we get into that, because we have a canned, dare I say canned, presentation. This is our, golly, Carl, is this the 9th presentation that CAAO has done? And I'm going to give you a little bit of history after some instructions. The bathrooms are in the hallway that's behind the wall behind me. So if you need a quick break, you should go out this door and hang a right, and this hallway, they're on the right-hand side. There's also some water there if somebody's parched. Courtesy of Tyler Technologies, they are one of my real estate partners in assessing value, and they've got a team of people here, and they are awesome at what they do. Also, another quick 2 orders of business. I have a good portion of my team here. It is Fair Week. So in the back, you're going to see all these handsome and adorable people with t-shirts that say Union County Auditor, and on the back, and then most of them are purple, because that's my favorite color, and on the back, you're going to see the QR code that it does work. So if you take a picture of it, it will take you to our site to kind of let you know, if you didn't, what county auditors do by statute in all 88 counties. But that's my team. They're awesome. I'm glad they're here. We have a lot of things for which we are responsible, and I have the best team in the county, bar none. So, introductions. Okay, so when Carl Keith is the auditor in Montgomery County. He's awesome. He's sitting in the front row. When last fall, when there was continued frustration with my association with what we feel is not a legitimate attempt by the General Assembly to give real property tax relief, he stood up, as he always does at our meetings, and says, we are the only ones that know anything about property tax. We should be educating people. And I sent him a text and I said, I want to help with that. I want to be involved in those presentations. So now, going forward to now, as I said, I think this might be the 8th or the 9th presentation that members of my association have done around the state. And because we are pretty centrally located, I thought it would be a really good idea, and I reached out to my colleagues that are contiguous to us, and every one of them said, yes, we want to be involved. So here today, they're not all going to speak, but unless you want to direct a question to them, are clearly us, Union, Logan, next door, Champaign County, Logan County, Jack Reeser. Jack, raise your hand. Champaign County is Karen, she's here. I have Madison County, Jennifer, here in the lovely purple blazer. We have Delaware County in the front row. Georgia's actually going to be speaking with us. Marion had another commitment, but she definitely would have been here. Otherwise, Marion County Joanne Casotis is not here. And Franklin County, we have Michael Stinziano, who is the auditor in Franklin County. Who am I missing? Is that 7? There were going to be 8, less Joanne is 7. I also have various and sundry other county officials here, and we just want to provide as much information as possible. So, is there any other housekeeping I need? I think that's it. So what I'm going to do is turn this over to Carl. We're going to do what we do with every one of these, which is go through a, 30-ish minute presentation. There'll be 4 of us that are going to be talking about those low-hanging fruit that I referred to. Myself and George Kaitza in Delaware, and Carl, and then Michael Cinziano in Franklin, and then Carl will wrap it up, and we'll open it up to questions from you all. Okay? Thank you so much. Carl, the floor is yours. Yep.
Thank you very much. Good to see everyone. Glad to be with you today. Andrea, thank you for organizing this. Again, as she said, we have done a number of these around the state. We've been to, we started in Dayton. Then we did, I don't remember them all. Springfield, Athens, Bowling Green, Youngstown, Willoughby. So we've been around the state, and from one corner to the other. So it's nice to kind of be centrally located for a change. And so thank you all for being here. As she said, the county auditors have put together some proposals to provide, to address this issue of property tax relief. We hear a lot of talk about it. We've heard a lot of talk about it now for some time. And so the auditors is something that we've studied as a group for some time. And it's not always easy for 88 county officials to come to some consensus, especially in a state like Ohio, where it's a wide variety of, it's a very diverse state. You've got, urban centers, right, with Franklin here, big urban counties, and then you have small rural counties. Vinton County, it comes to mind, but some of the other, mid-sized counties. So we have different needs and we have different priorities. So it's difficult for all of us to come to some consensus sometimes, especially on an issue like property tax relief. But we spent some time going over this issue and have come together with some ideas and some proposals that we could all agree to, that we felt like would provide some immediate relief to folks. These are not gimmicks or schemes necessarily. These are real ideas that we have, and so we've got this PowerPoint presentation we're going to go through and share some of that information with you today. So we will get started. Now, part of the frustration that has started all of this is the rise in property values. We've all had these double-digit increases in property values as a result of a very robust real estate market that's been growing for some time. This didn't happen overnight. We've seen these growing off the chart real estate sales. I know in my county, we've never seen anything like it as far as the real estate market. And so here, this is a good example here. The median home values have increased 67% in the last 5 years. That's nationally. So it's not a Union County issue. It's not a Dayton issue. It's not even an Ohio issue. It's a nationwide issue, and this is really brought to everybody's attention. The rise in values comes with it tax increases, and so we've seen the median annual tax increase in the United States between 2019 and 2023 surged 23%. Taxes increased in Ohio 20% in that same period. So we've seen these astronomical increases in both values and taxes, and so it's what got our attention. It's what brings us all here today, I think. This is a editorial that my friend Michael Stenziano, the Franklin County Auditor, provided to in the Columbus Dispatch a couple of years ago, addressing this issue because these values, and we stopped dealing with the values were the problem. And the values are not the problem. Values are not the problem. So this was the point he made here in this guest column he wrote. Ohio does not have a valuation problem. We have a taxation problem. So that's why we have focused our attention on the issues that I'm going to provide today, that we're going to provide today. This was an editorial that appeared in the Toledo Blade back a couple of months ago. What did I do? Did I skip it? There we go. Back a couple of months ago in the Toledo Blade, where we had been up in that area of the state in Bowling Green and did our presentation, and this was their editorial. County auditors have a plan. We just need to encourage the General Assembly to follow that plan, follow the auditors. And so these are our points. We have 4 of them. We recommend expanding the homestead exemption, the homestead program, eliminating the non-business credit and expand the owner occupancy credit, limit the growth in revenue received from school districts due to reappraisal training. That's commonly referred to dealing with the issue called the 20 mil floor, and we're going to talk about that today, and then create a menu of targeted relief. So I'm going to talk about the number 2 for just a few minutes, talk about the non-business credit and expanding the owner occupancy credit. I'm going to talk about that. Then Andrew's going to come back and she's going to talk about our ideas about the homestead program. George Keitzel from Delaware County is going to talk about the 20 mil floor issue. He drew the short straw. And then Michael Stenziano is going to do number 4, to create a menu of targeted relief. So let's begin. The non-business owner occupancy credit, the non-business credit, I think, goes back to 1970 when the state legislature was commonly referred to as a rollback. You roll back 10% on your real estate bill. The legislature authorized a rollback of 10% on your tax bill. And then a few years after that, they did this, what's called the 2.5%, this owner occupancy credit. These were statewide programs that the legislature did. They're the original property tax relief programs. These were programs that the state put in place to provide property tax relief for homeowners throughout the state. The 10% rollback was for anybody that had any residential property, The 2.5% was for owner-occupied property. Early 70s, late 70s, that's when these programs were put in place. Now, since 2014, any levy that's passed since 2014, they've taken those away. So that's why one of our recommendations is to restore those provisions, to continue those programs like they were in the past, rather than get rid of them. The 10% rollback was for both residential and commercial. They removed it completely from commercial property a number of years ago, and now it's phasing out over time. Is that fair to say? Phasing out over time. So we're proposing that we put those back in place. That we maybe one of the ideas is to maybe combine them, to combine the two to make it simpler to understand. But whatever we do, we'd like to see the owner occupancy credit doubled to 5%. We could increase the rollback to 12.5%. But the main thing is to restore those to levies that have been passed since 2013. We think was important. Again, that would give every residential property owner in the state a tax break, a tax relief. That's easily doable. The mechanics are there in place. The infrastructure is in place in our offices. And this is something we could do right away that would give real relief to property owners going forward. That's one of our recommendations. Next one is the homestead exemption, and Andrew's going to talk about that.
Thank you, Carl. Homestead, who knows what homestead is? Gold Star, what are the two things you need to qualify for homestead? Anybody? Yes, Laura? No, you can't. That's cheating, you already know. You have to, and my mother would have said, you have to be old and poor. Essentially, that's what it is. Over 65, and you have to be deeded. This is a problem we've had in the past too. People might have their property in a trust. No, it has to be deeded in an individual's name as of the tax lien date. Tax lien date is January 1 of every year. So you have to own your property, your name has to be on the deed, and you've got to be 65 years and older. Then Governor Strickland had removed a previous income requirement. Then Governor Kasich brought it back. And that happened at the same time that Carl commented about 13 and 14 levies in that time period, that said now you don't just have to have your name deeded on your deed for your home and live there, your primary dwelling, but you can only make a certain amount of money a year. It's income dependent. So what are those rules? Am I pushing the forward button here? Yes, okay. So you have to make this year, golly, I think it's $41,000 a year or less. And since 2007, the first time that the amount of value on which your credit is based, I'll say that again, the amount of value that your credit is based was fixed. It was $25,000. So the way the credit works is that if your house is valued at $100,000 or if your house is valued at $500,000 or $1 million, odds are you're not going to qualify because you make too much anyway. But either way, whatever your house is valued at, $25,000 of value, whatever the tax would be on that amount of value in your area, because the tax isn't the same everywhere. It depends on the value of your home, the tax rate that you live in. So if you live in Marysville schools versus North Union schools, this is for Union County people, or Fairbanks, or you live in Allen Township versus Jerome Township, your tax rate is different. So whatever your tax rate is, ultimately times that $25,000 in value is what your credit is. Well, as that slide would say, that $25,000 was fixed up until 23. That was the first time the legislature saw fit to change it. What that meant was that as values have gone up, the amount of that credit got diluted. Does that make sense? So if your value would go from $200,000 to $250,000, but the amount of value on which your credit was based was fixed, that credit became a smaller part of your tax situation. So you still were getting the homestead, but it was less impact for you because your house had more value. These three credits, the bottom point there, it goes along with what Carl had said as well. These three credits, the only way they work is that the state reimburses them. So for example, I live in Paris Township, I live here in the city of Marysville. I live in the township but not in their fire district, but let's pretend I live in the fire district. So I pay the fire levy. Guess what? Paris Township needs the whole 5.9 mils for the fire levy, and that's what the voters approved. So if when I cut my check, when my husband and I pay our taxes, we're gonna get, not for homestead, but for owner occupancy, because we're not old or poor, we don't get the homestead exemption, but we get the other two. So that means the check that we write is a net. It doesn't include those two amounts because they're credited, that we pay less. But Paris Township still needs that full amount. So the state makes them whole. So the Paris Townships of the world get two payments when taxes are paid. They get one from the property owner, the check they cut, and then they get a check from the state making them whole, and homestead is the same thing. So for those homeowners that qualify for homestead, the state makes the levying agencies whole, which I know my school treasurers are happy about, which I've got 3 of them in the room, 2 of them in the room. I'm glad you're here. So the state makes them whole, so that way these local levying agencies, whether it's a cemetery levy or a fire levy in Jerome Township, or whether it's 911, thank you Sheriff for being here, whether it's the 911 levy or mental health, whatever it is, they get what was voted and promised to them, they just get it in 2 checks. One comes from the taxpayer through paying to the county treasury, and then I settle it, and the other comes from the state. So this homestead exemption is the exact same way. Also, there is legislation now, I don't believe it's been, let me back up. Disabled veterans may be eligible for additional benefits. That is true today. It increases the amount of value to which the credit can be applied. There's also a bill out there sponsored by our own Tracy Richardson, I don't know who the co-sponsor is, to increase that amount, and I don't know where the status is for that as far as hearings or anything, but I know that there is an effort to make that more. So here's just an example of what is an average annual tax savings. Amy, this is where your work came in right here on this slide. You can see Union County's average homestead is $448. So keep in mind that I said that the amount that you get is based on where you live and the tax rate that you pay, because some have higher effective tax rates than others based on the levies that are in place there. So you can see in this area what an average homestead, and mine, I assume the other 4 are for tax year 24. The Union County numbers for tax year 24, but that's just a good idea to show what a taxpayer who would qualify, keep in mind, they can't make more than $42,000 a year, and they gotta be older than 65 and older. The top bullet is what I made a comment about before, that as property values have gone up, when the amount of value on which the credit is based was fixed, it diluted the impact for the property owner. So they were still getting it, but the impact on their taxes was going down, and steadily declined. And the income has gone up, so, but only marginally amount. So if you make $43,000 a year, you don't qualify. You know, it's not a very large amount of income. So what we would like to do, we cut off Carl's head there, top of that picture. What we're supporting, CAAO is supporting, is to maybe double, instead of $28,000, a value that has the tax rate applied to it. Let's double that. Let's make it 50, 56, 60,000, make it a higher amount of value, especially because the value of real estate, because of the market that we live in, continues to rise. Let's make that value that gets the credit more larger, so it has more impact. It will allow more homeowners to qualify, and the benefit for them, as I just said, will be bigger. And it will allow the most vulnerable Ohioans that we have to maybe stay in their homes longer, because they're going to get a little more benefit because of that. Okay, George is up. The 20 mil floor. I'm going to turn it over to him, and he can educate you on a little bit of school finance.
Thank you, Andrea. Sure. So, how many of you have heard of the 20 mil floor? Well, we've got quite a few people. I know a lot of those were auditors that raised their hands. And I hope this isn't like watching paint dry. But in my view, my personal view, I think this is the most consequential change that we can make in terms of property tax reform. And it will not lower property taxes, but what it will do is it will control the growth in property taxes by affecting the value, in other words, by preventing the value from increasing your taxes. So, and again, I want to emphasize, number one, we all love our schools. We want good schools. Schools support property values, you know, and the 20 mil floor was a benefit that was granted to school districts back in 1977. So I need to step back one more year, and I go back to 1976, and that was when something called the 920 factor was adopted by the legislature. It's also called the tax reduction factor. What that does is that reduces voted levies. These are levies that are with a tax rate, not a fixed levy, but with a tax rate, so that whenever values go up by whatever percentage it is during a reappraisal year or triennial update, if values go up by 15%, 20%, 35%, like they did in Delaware County in '23, then the tax rate, the effective tax rate that you pay, goes down by 35%. So the net impact to you as a property owner is a flat tax. Your tax does not change. However, with inflation, the school districts went to the legislature and asked for an additional benefit. And that benefit was that the school reduction in school levies for current expenses could not fall below 20 mils. Now, what that means is that for school districts that are above the 20 mil floor, then those levies are adjusted by the tax reduction factor. But once that school district hits that 20 mil floor, then those values can no longer go below that. And the impact of that is that the increase in your property value translates into the same percentage increase in your property taxes. So if your property value went up by 35%, your property taxes for the school district will also go up by 35%. And that is really the real problem, in my view, that has precipitated this whole property tax issue. For a point of reference, in the state of Ohio, we have about 620 school districts statewide, and those 620 school districts, over 400 of them are at the 20 mil floor. That means that all of those 420 school districts, as they're in a reappraisal cycle, whether it's a 6-year cycle or a 3-year cycle, will see property tax increases that are tied directly to the increase in values. My good friend Chris Klein in Lawrence County told me that some of their school districts there haven't put a levy on the ballot for 20 years because they've all just been able to get additional revenue resulting from the 20 mil floor adjustment. Now again, I want to emphasize, this is not anything that the school districts are doing covertly, or they're trying to do something that they shouldn't be doing. This is a benefit that the legislature granted to the school districts to help them deal with inflationary increases for current expenses. So, and we see there that, like, for 2024, a lot of school district taxes will go up by 20%. In Delaware County, we had 3 school districts that were at the 20 mil floor. For those school districts, the property taxes for the individual homers went up by about 14 to 15%. For those living in, like, Olentangy, Dublin, and Westerville, their taxes only went up by 4 to 5%. So you can see how much of an impact that 20 mil floor can have. The green button?
Right behind my clicker door.
The one to the right? Ah, okay. So, and kind of restate that point again on the slide that Carl prepared for this presentation. You can see that in a school district that is not at the 20 mil floor, taxes will go up by about 5%. What that really is, and those of you that want to get into the weeds, that's a result of inside millage, which is a whole other story. But you can see by comparison for those school districts that are at the 20 mil floor where that adjustment cannot be made, the taxes went up by 14%. So I wanted to, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to prepare the slide or send the slide to Carl, but to just kind of explain how that 20 mil floor works. So if we have a home value at $285,000 average value, has a tax value of $100,000. Let's say the current tax rate is 30 mils. So the current taxes on that property would be about $3,000. Now that property goes through a reappraisal. Let's say it goes up by 35%, so that now the value is $385,000. And its taxable value goes up to $135,000. So what the tax reduction factor, or House Bill 920 adjustment does, is it reduces that tax rate from 30 mils to 22.2 mils. So that when the tax calculation is made, then it's 22 mils times the new value, so that the net effect is that the taxes are $3,000. If that adjustment were not made, those taxes would jump to $4,040. So that's exactly what happens with the 20 mil floor. If we have the same example, and let's say we assume that the school district is at 20 mils, they have 20 mils for current operations, and they go through a 35% reappraisal cycle. And so as a result of that, the tax reduction factor would reduce that tax rate from 20 mils to 14.8 mils. So 14.8 mils times the new value would give you the same tax rate of $2,000. Or I'm sorry, the same tax amount of $2,000. However, because the school district is at the 20 mil floor, that adjustment cannot be made. And as a result, the millage is held at a tax rate of 20 mils applied to the new value, which now has a new tax value of new tax payment of $2,700. So we've had an unvoted $700 increase in the property taxes on this particular property because of that 20 mil floor adjustment. And that's really the underlying issue, and why we as auditors so strongly support making adjustments to the 20 mil floor. Now again, as I stated, we're all in favor of good schools. We want to keep good schools. Schools are important to our society, to our property values, and all sorts of things. So what our recommendation has been is that we keep those values that we allow the 20 mil floor to work, but limit it to the rate of inflation. So instead of property taxes being able to go by the percentage, and this is an uncontrolled problem. I mean, the increase in property values, as Auditor Stenziano mentioned, it's not a valuation problem. As valuations go up by 35%, then we would actually limit, instead of taxes going up by 35%, they would be limited to the rate of inflation. And I think all of us as auditors really support that recommendation, and where we're having these sessions to help educate you so that you can talk to your representatives and senators to tell them how important this adjustment is made, why this adjustment needs to be made. In Delaware County, for example, those 3 school districts that were at the 20 mil floor went to the 20 mil floor as a result of the 2023 reappraisal. Each one of them collected about $5 million in additional property tax revenue. The Joint Vocational School District also collected about $5 million in additional tax revenue as a result of the reappraisal. The rate for joint vocational districts is different from school districts. They have a 2 mil floor as opposed to a 20 mil floor, but the process is exactly the same. So in Delaware County for 2023, we had $20 million of property tax revenue that was the result simply of the mechanics of the way the 20 mil floor and the reappraisal system works. So again, this is, the school districts at all. The Department of Taxation looks at the tax rate, and if it falls below 20 mils, it's raised back up to the 20 mil level. Anyway, with that, that brings us really to the proposal that we as county auditors have, and that is we continue to allow the school districts to benefit from that 20 mil floor adjustment, but that adjustment would be limited to the rate of inflation rather than to the uncontrolled rate of growth in property values. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. And Michael?
OH! I gotta have some energy after a 20-minute floor discussion. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Michael Stinson. I have the honor of serving as the Franklin County Auditor. So uniquely, Franklin County does not have any home school districts with 20-mil floor. But it is important throughout the state of Ohio why Franklin County continues to support the Auditors Association's ongoing work having that 20-mil floor piece. But what you heard is that relationship between valuation and what's going on within your taxing district. So in Franklin County, when we went through our mass reappraisal, we had a 41% value increase, historic increase. But for 2 levies passing, 50% of property taxes would have been flat or actually decreased. So we continue to remind folks, your value can go up, you want your value to go up. Your taxes can go down. Your value could go down and your taxes can increase. And so that correlation and why additional solutions are so important. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about a little bit of those menus of additional property tax reform options. When you hear the word menu, it's something we've adopted in Franklin County because we understand there's not one size that fits all. Betty and Bob Buckeye may have a different circumstance at their kitchen table than their neighbors. And so having a variety of options, asking the General Assembly to seek a menu is what's so important. And so that menu can take many different forms. There are means-tested, tried-and-true processes adopted in a number of other states that the association is supportive, wanting to continue to see changes and adopt solutions. So just a couple that are highlighted on the PowerPoint. Tax deferral. For those that aren't familiar, tax deferral is an opportunity where the property owner would pay what they can at the time. The tax would continue on. The state would backfill that piece, and then say there's a sale, say there's other circumstances, say that individual, that property owner received additional funds, new job, a promotion, then they could pay that difference. So you defer till later, but that amount would remain. That exists in other states across the country. Income tax credits. So as people are continuing to see other opportunities, that could be another mechanism that exists. But what is important, what the auditors will continue to push, is that we want them to be targeted. Moderate, low income in particular, we don't appreciate hearing people being property taxed out of their homes. I'm always quick to remind people it's the treasurer, not the auditor, the treasurer, that you send that property tax bill and payment to. But we have an important role in that process. We're also supportive in looking at circuit breakers. 30 states have circuit breakers across the country. Continuing to ask the General Assembly to seek solutions, be creative, go to what's means tested. But there are ideas and means tested ability for property tax relief today that could be adopted that many residents, many neighborhoods could see. 20 mil floor is important, homestead, but other policy solutions are what we're looking for. And then we also have concerns about reforming abatements. In Franklin County, we have a lot of abatements. For those that aren't familiar, auditors serve as the chair of the TIRC, Tax Incentive Review Councils. If you've ever been to a TIRC meeting, you've had a good time. But it is important that as we see those abatements, that piece of that property tax pie is going somewhere else. And so where we see the growth in Franklin County that continues to happen, tax abatements being a motivator for bringing in businesses, that is an area where we feel there could be additional reform as well. The goal, again, making sure that as we continue to see this concern, there are menus, a variety of options, and the Auditors Association continues to lead, continue to share what those are. Property owners play an important role in terms of what they would like to see as well. And so really continue to remind our friends of the General Assembly, there are solutions out there. What you've heard, bills have been introduced. Bills have not been introduced just in the recent General Assembly. I've served as auditor the last 7 years. I think we've seen maybe 20 different homestead reform ideas proposed. We've seen circuit breakers proposed for the last 3 years. We've seen a study committee with 21 recommendations, maybe even more, occur. And so really asking the General Assembly, asking you, as you'll see at the very bottom of the pullout, or contact your members of the General Assembly. Remind them this is so important. And what other solutions are out there. These are just some that the Auditors Association have studied before. If property owners have other ideas, contact your General Assembly. We always appreciate the opportunity to work with them on what that solution can be. Again, that menu, not a one-size-fits-all model. What's important in Franklin County may differ in Union County, may be different in Montgomery County, but having that menu allows for property owners to select what relief, what options are best for their household and their kitchen table. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to turn it back to Auditor Keith.
Okay, we're going to kind of wrap things up here a little bit, but before we do, we wanted to kind of talk, he's up potty, he's had enough. It wasn't quite like watching paint dry, has it? Yeah, a little bit. So we've been doing this since January. We've been going around the state making these presentations, talking about our recommendations since January, where there's been a number of recent developments that we thought, well, there's just no way we can't talk about what's going on with this issue without at least mentioning them, so that you know that we are aware of what's going on in the world around us. And so we know that there's this referendum to amend the Ohio Constitution. We know that there was legislation included in the state budget that offers a piggyback tax credit and the other things in the state budget. So I just want to touch on those three things just a little bit before we open it up for questions. The Citizens for Property Tax Reform, are there anybody here from the Citizens for Property Tax Reform? We have some folks here. So, this is a group that was formed out of, it's a grassroots group. It comes out of Cuyahoga County, and they have put an amendment together and got approval from the Attorney General to circulate petitions to put a referendum on the ballot, a constitutional amendment that would eliminate property taxes entirely. And so the original goal, they wanted to put this on for this November's election. They had a July 1 deadline to collect 413,000 signatures, so they had about a month to do that or less. And so they were not able to do that to meet that deadline, but they are in the process of circulating petitions and with the hope of putting this on the ballot in May of 2026, or we'll get to you, May of 2026 or next November. So the issue there, of course, is again, it comes out of frustration, and I think we all understand that, as Auditor Cinziano referred to, mentioned, there's over the last several cycles, General Assemblies, there's been numerous tax proposals, bills introduced in the General Assembly. None of them have passed, none of them have gone anywhere. So I think we're all equally as frustrated. We understand the frustration, do something, right? Do something. And so we have this effort out there to try to get something done, something passed, so we all appreciate that. But we also all appreciate the fact that there's the property tax statewide produces about $18 billion in revenue that supports primarily local schools, but beyond schools, fire and police protection, road construction, human services. There's a number of basic services, vital services that are included in that, and so that's an issue. That if you eliminated that tax, what happens to those services, and how do we come up with $18 billion, or not, So that's a concern. The piggyback items that were included in the state budget that was approved includes provisions that allows counties to add to the homestead exemption and the owner occupancy credit to double those provisions. And you think, well, the Auditors Association has been pushing to see the homestead exemption program expanded, the owner occupancy program expanded, so we should probably support that, right? And I don't want to speak for other auditors because this has just been approved in the last, since June 30th, approved June 30th, and I don't think everybody's really had an opportunity to really give it a whole lot of thought. But it would authorize the county commissioners to implement this, but the money does not come from the state. When we talked, when Andrea did her presentation, the ideal part about the fun part about the homestead exemption as it exists now, it's a win-win. The property owner gets a tax break, and the local jurisdiction is reimbursed by the state for the lost revenue. In these piggyback scenario, the property owner would get the tax break, but the local community would have to pay for it. So the money would come from your local schools, your human services, your libraries, your park districts. They would have to pay for the increase in the homestead exemption, which wasn't exactly what the homestead exemption was intended to do. I don't think anybody, when they vote for a tax levy, they didn't vote that tax levy with the intention that someone pay part of the bill for someone else. I don't think that was not part of the levy that was put on the ballot. So anyway, there's some issues, and then, again, it's up to the county commissioners. So county commissioners, I think, are just now starting to talk about it amongst themselves. I know my county commissioners, I've had some conversations with them. I don't think in my county, if they did this, it would cost the local schools in Montgomery County, it would cost those schools $18 million. And I don't think the county commissioners are thrilled about making a decision that would cost local schools $18 million. That, for making a decision for some other entity to cut the revenue sources for some other entity. But again, that's new, and I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of conversation about it going forward. So I just want to say this real quick then. The state budget approved June 30th. The governor signed the state budget June 30th. He vetoed 67 items. He's allowed, the Ohio Constitution allows the governor to do a line veto, so he vetoed 67 items. There was nothing in that state budget that provided direct property tax relief. This piggyback provision is about the only thing that really provided some tax relief, but again, that's not direct from the state. It would have to come from your local schools primarily. So there's no direct property tax relief. But in his veto message, the governor announced the creation of this property tax reform working group. Here we go again, another working group on property tax reform, but again, created by governor. It's got 11 members. They started meeting yesterday. I heard they were meeting yesterday. It does include 2 auditors, so we're thrilled, I think, that we do have a voice at the table. Warren County Auditor Matt Nolan, who's the president of our association, and Lake County Auditor Chris Galloway, who's the second vice president, I think. And so these 2 have been working with us and have made these types of presentations like we're doing today. So they are part of this committee, so I'm glad to see them part of it. Their report is, the governor has required them to issue a report by September 30th to address property tax relief, and we'll see where that goes. This is, someone mentioned to me this morning and made the point that this committee, this group, is not a public body. It is not meeting in public, and so what with their discussions and what's going on, we'll have to wait till September 30th, I think, to find out where that's at and what kind of recommendations they might have. So that gets us back to our 4 recommendations and why we want to continue pushing these 4 recommendations: expanding the homestead program, eliminating the non-business credit, really expanding the owner occupancy credit, limit the growth in the revenue, limit the 20 mil growth issue, and then creating this menu of targeted relief programs, a menu of items that, again, not one size fits all, as Auditor Stenziano mentioned, but it gives opportunities for others to, other jurisdictions to make some decisions about what works best in their communities. those are our recommendations. They continue to be our recommendations going forward, and we're continuing to, we've got, appreciate the opportunity to do this, to discuss them today. And Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you, right?